Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Levee. This is bullshit. It doesn't take two of us to guard this levee. Nothing's going to happen. Especially not this time of night in the pouring rain. Don't know why we have to stand outside rather than sit in the cab. Could see just as bad from in than out. You just drove in today. Go ahead and get some sleep in the deuce. You look like shit. You look like shit. Nah. Remember, I'm kinda local. I got to sleep in my old bed at my mom's place last night. Go. Okay. Thanks, man. Yeah, whatever. And stop. Who's there? This levee is under the supervision of the National Guard. Turn around and return the way you came. Sorry, young man, but we can't do that. We don't want trouble, but we gotta do this. It's the only way. Mr. Hicks. What's your tag there, say? Adams? Which one of the Adams boys are you? Rick. Sir, I'm Rick. Who's with you? Just me and my dad, son. Just me and him. Why don't you put that gun down? Old Pops is with you? What are you two doing here? Let's just put that gun down, son. We'll explain. I can't do that, sir. Especially not with you holding that shotgun. You two need to stop bickering like old hens before I drop this box. That wouldn't be good for any of us. What's in the box? Dynamite. Dynamite? What the hell, Pops? Why are you bringing dynamite out here? Mr. Hicks? It's the only way, Ricky. The only way we don't lose everything. I don't understand. We gotta blow the levee before we lose everything. Our farm is set to get flooded out completely. I can't let you do that. I'm really sorry about the farm, but I can't let you do that. I've got orders to shoot, if necessary. We have to protect this levee. You wouldn't shoot me, would you, Ricky? After I coached you all those years in Little League and Pee Wee, I'm the one who coached the high school to state the year you won that fancy scholarship and hightailed it out of town. Come on now, let us through. No, I'm sorry, but you're talking about saving one or two farms. On the other side of this levee, there are over 50 homes with young families, with little kids asleep in their beds. Bullpucky boy. We heard the evacuation orders for the whole area on the radio. Ain't nobody there. They were even going to evacuate the old folks' home. This one keeps trying to put me in. We waited 2 days. Everybody should be gone. We ain't no murderers. That's exactly what you're about to be. If you've been listening, you know that evacuation didn't happen. My grandmother's down there right now, And all those families. What Amy's do you mean down didn't happen there? What? You said you've been listening to the radio. Well, power went out a bit after the evacuation orders were first announced. What do you mean it didn't happen? The levee up toward Summitburg on the other branch failed. It took out the island bridge. They can't evacuate. You said aim. Your gran is down at the old folks' home. Why didn't your ma bring her home? She should be home. Kara never did like your gran much. Figures she left her there. Your father is rolling in his grave. Hey, we tried Pops. She refused to leave. She insisted she can still help. Stubborn as a mule. That's your gran. Help with what, for God's sake? Just before the bridge went down, the med center went under. They saw that coming and had already evacuated everyone. Doc and a couple of nurses threw everything they could in the ambulance and set up in the nursing home. It's now the only medical facility in 3 counties. The Emergency Services Center went under, too. Grandma's running triage and dispatch from the night nurse station. Yep. That's definitely something she could do in her sleep. She was a Spitfire Army nurse, then spent probably 30 years running that dispatch before retiring. Well, holy. But our farm? Bill, hush. Private. Have your engineer types checked out this levee? Is it going to hold if it keeps raining like this? They're not sure. There's some work supposed to happen tomorrow if this rain lets up a bit, but it's mostly wait and see. You got a radio, private? One I can reach your gran on? I'm supposed to keep it on the guard channel. Just for a minute. No one will know it was your radio and not a personal one. Please. Okay. Here, Amy Adams. You there, sweetheart? It's Hank. Hank Hicks. You get off this emergency channel. This is for business. Just one quick ask, hun. Can you get word out for anyone willing to come by my place and drive the cows from the dairy barn across the road into the hills? I'm not there, and it's going to flood in real quick. My grandson, Mike, worked for you last summer. He's right here. I'll send him and anyone he thinks can help. Thank you, sweetheart. I gotta go. Dad, what was that about? We can be back in plenty of time to drive the cows out ourselves. If it even comes to that. Oh, it's come to that. Come on, Bill. We've got a levee to blow up. What do you mean, Pops? No, Dad. No. We'll lose everything. More than everything. What are you guys talking about? I'm talking about taking some of the pressure off this here levee to make sure your gran and all those folks stay safe. What are you talking about? He's talking about blowing the private levee in our back pasture. Flash flooding the whole farm. Darn right I am. Let's go. No! We can deal with some flooding, but that would wipe out everything. Son, it is still my farm, not yours. We'll lose crops. We'll lose equipment. We might well lose buildings too. But the land ain't going nowhere. And with the cows up in the hills, there'll still be a herd. You can use all the different property and crop and equipment insurance money to rebuild with all the fancy modern thingamabobs you keep going on about. Insurance. Dad, Why the hell were we up here meaning to blow up this levee if we have insurance? I ain't never made an insurance claim, and I wasn't about to start if I could help it. Wait, what do you mean I can use the money? You mean we, right? Nope. I'm thinking I'll move myself into that old folks' home with his pretty grandma and leave you to it. Let's go blow a levee. Reality checked. Maggie stared out the kitchen window, her brow knitted in quiet contemplation as she waited for her coffee to finish brewing. The sun poured through the window, warm and radiant. Yet something felt off. It had rained throughout the night. She recalled the rhythmic pitter-patter against her bedroom window and the wind wailing through the trees. The forecast had called for more storms well into late afternoon. However, outside, the world looked untouched, as if the night's downpour had never happened. She recalled having drinks with her best friends from college last night at the new upscale lounge downtown. Lori had been eager to check out the exclusive rooftop bar, but the rain had forced them to stay inside. Instead, they gathered in one of the lounge's sleek, dimly lit sections, sipping mojitos and catching up. Lori had always dreamed of becoming a corporate attorney, and after years of relentless studying and grueling internships, she had finally landed a position at one of Pittsburgh's top law firms earlier this year. It was all she had ever wanted, and from the way she spoke about it, the long hours and high stakes didn't faze her in the slightest. Sammy and Chloe also seemed to have settled comfortably into their dream careers. Sammy, with her sharp wit and boundless creativity, was making a name for herself in marketing, crafting campaigns for major brands. Chloe, whom she had known since third grade and always the most compassionate of the group, had pursued a career in healthcare, working as a pediatric nurse, the job she had dreamed of since childhood. As Maggie sat there, she couldn't help but wonder if she was the only one still searching for a sense of purpose, trapped in a routine she couldn't escape. Suddenly, the coffee pot beeped, a sharp, cheerful sound, as if proudly announcing the completion of its task. The abrupt noise jolted Maggie from her thoughts, pulling her away from the window. With a sigh, she grabbed the pot and poured the steaming coffee into her oversized pit mug. She and her friends had bought matching mugs from the university shop, a sentimental keepsake to mark their transition from students to University of Pittsburgh alumni. Back then, they had imagined themselves stepping into bright, promising careers, proudly flaunting their school spirit in their new offices. But as Maggie wrapped her fingers around the familiar ceramic, she couldn't ignore the nagging truth. Her future hadn't turned out the way she once envisioned. Maggie took a sip of her coffee and immediately winced at the bitterness, the sharp taste jolting her from her distracted thoughts. She'd forgotten to add the creamer. Heading toward the refrigerator, a realization settled over her. It was Sunday, grocery day. With a resigned sigh, she set down her mug shuffled to her bedroom to change, then grabbed her purse and keys and headed out the door. The moment she stepped outside, the air was warm and rich with the scent of sun-soaked earth and blooming wildflowers. No trace of petrichor, no lingering dampness on the pavement. It was as if the storm she so vividly remembered had never happened at all. Maggie swallowed, her throat dry and tight. Something was off. She could feel it in her bones. An uncanny sense that the world had shifted on its axis while she slept. She glanced across the street and noticed her neighbors gathered on their lawns, laughing and chatting as if it were a holiday. Odd, she thought. But what unsettled her most was Mr. Burns. The older man was usually a storm cloud of irritation, no matter the day. He'd spent his life working at the same furniture store his great-great-grandfather had built, forever grumbling about long hours and slow employees. Just yesterday, after another exhausting Saturday shift, his voice had carried across the street, complaining about sluggish junior workers, while his wife, Mrs. Burns, stood by the door, nodding in passive agreement, with an umbrella in hand as he stomped into the house. But today, he was all smiles, chatting with the Morgans and the Wilsons, laughing as if he didn't have a single care in the world. Just then, Mr. Burns looked over, spotted her, and waved. "Good morning, Maggie." "Good morning, Mr. Burns," Maggie said, her voice tinged with bewilderment. He grinned and called out, "When you get a chance this week, stop by the store. I'll give you a discount on any furniture you want. We just received an investment, and things are really looking up." "Oh, wow, that's wonderful," Maggie replied, trying to mask the confusion on her face. Mr. Burns had never spoken to her before. A grunt or a quick nod was all she ever got. It was always Mrs. Burns who was the social one. Maggie's skin prickled. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she climbed into her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Something definitely isn't right, she thought. First, the weather seemed odd, and now her neighbor was acting like an entirely different person. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I didn't sleep well, and the mojitos from last night aren't sitting well with me. But no matter how she tried to rationalize it, every instinct screamed that something was undeniably wrong. The drive to the grocery store was oddly surreal. Streets that normally peppered with Sunday morning traffic were unsettlingly quiet. The few cars she passed moved at an unhurried pace, their drivers smiling and waving as if caught up in some unspoken festivity. Pedestrians strolled along the sidewalks with a light-hearted spring in their step, while dogs pranced happily alongside their humans, tails wagging as if the entire world was enveloped in an unfamiliar sense of joy as she pulled into the parking lot of Greenfields Market. Her unease deepened. The vast stretch of asphalt, usually packed with cars on a Sunday morning, was nearly empty. Only a handful of vehicles sat scattered across the grocery store lot, gleaming under the strangely intense sunlight like polished gems. She cautiously eased into a parking space near the entrance and cut the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, fingers still resting on the steering wheel as she scanned her surroundings, trying to steady her thoughts. "What is going on?" she whispered to herself. Finally, after calming herself, she grabbed her purse and stepped out of the car. The door closed shut behind her, the sound echoing across the parking lot, unnervingly loud against the surrounding stillness. As she approached the store, the automatic doors slid open with an almost too cheerful whoosh, releasing a wave of cool, conditioned air. The familiar fluorescent glow spilled onto the pavement, blinding her momentarily, forcing her to blink rapidly to adjust her eyes. Her gaze landed on the store employees gathered at the entrance, their faces lit with excitement as they chatted and laughed. They held a large banner that read, "Welcome to Greenfields Market. Happy grand reopening. A new beginning awaits." A grand reopening? This surprised Maggie. She had been at this store just a few days ago, and there had been no sign of renovations, no announcements, no changes, nothing to suggest something like this was happening. She forced a smile at the employees as she walked past, gripping her purse handle tightly. Grabbing a cart, she headed toward the produce section, trying once again to shake off the uneasiness rising in her chest. Maggie quickly grabbed her usual grocery items and a few snacks, hurrying toward the register. Despite the small number of customers, the store hummed with an unusual liveliness. As she made her way through the aisles, everything seemed different. The store fully stocked the shelves with fresh produce, neatly arranged in vibrant displays. Maggie couldn't believe what was happening. This wasn't just a grand reopening. It felt like an entirely new store. Yet everything looked exactly as it always had. As she fumbled with her wallet, she heard someone call her name. "Maggie, so nice to see you today. How are you?" It was Jen from her yoga class. Maggie barely managed a smile as she turned to face her. "I'm good. Just doing a little shopping," she replied, her voice flat with a forced smile. "Oh, I totally get it." Jen chuckled. "I'm getting ready for the week too. Can't wait. You won't believe it, but I got a promotion to regional manager last Thursday. Can you believe it? I'm doing what I always wanted." Maggie froze. "Wait, what? I thought you said you hated your job. You even told me you were looking for something else, even if they offered you a promotion." Jen placed a hand on Maggie's shoulder, her face glowing with excitement. Not anymore. It's my dream job now, Maggie. Isn't it amazing? It feels like a new beginning. Maggie felt a wave of nausea rise in her stomach. Her head spun, and her heart began to race. This didn't feel right. How could everything change so suddenly? The world felt like it was wrapped in some strange, happy haze. How was everyone so cheerful? They continued sharing a little small talk and hugged goodbye just as the cashier finished ringing up Maggie's items. But Maggie's mind was miles away. As if on autopilot, she barely noticed the total as she grabbed her bags and hurried out. Slipping into her car, she leaned back in the seat, feeling disoriented. What was going on? I need caffeine, she muttered, hoping the words would ground her. She headed to the local cafe, desperate for a mocha to shake the eerie feeling that had taken over her, hoping it would wake her up, both literally and figuratively. As Maggie stepped into the cafe, she was taken aback by the atmosphere. It wasn't the usual hectic, impatient crowd, with long lines and customers in a rush. Instead, the cafe was filled with a relaxed energy. People were chatting casually, laughing, and smiling as they sipped their drinks. Then, out of nowhere, one of her co-workers from the hotel, Tim, walked in. His face lit up with a big grin. Their eyes met, and he waved enthusiastically as he made his way toward her, skillfully weaving through customers who were leaving. "Maggie, how are you?" Tim called out, his voice full of excitement. "I'm hanging in there," Maggie replied, still trying to make sense of the strange energy in the air as he joined the line behind her. Tim worked as a bartender at the hotel and was also an aspiring musician, playing local gigs with his band. "Maggie, you won't believe it." Tim's eyes were sparkling as he leaned in closer. "I just signed a huge deal." "What? No way. Congratulations, Tim," Maggie exclaimed, her surprise matching the excitement in his voice. Tim couldn't contain his joy. "Yeah, my band got signed to a record label yesterday. It's my dream, and it's happening." Maggie shouted along with him, her mind still on guard. As Maggie picked up her mocha and exchanged goodbyes with Tim, she slowly made her way to the cafe door, still trying to process what she'd just heard. She was genuinely happy for him, but it felt like everyone's life was suddenly falling perfectly into place. Everyone except hers. She stepped outside into the warm air, the cafe's artificial ambiance fading behind her. As her foot hit the pavement and the fresh air brushed her face, a shiver ran through her, a silent reminder that something was wrong. The streets remained unnervingly serene. Everywhere she looked, people seemed to be exactly where they were meant to be. As she drove home, The familiar scene mirrored the one she had seen on her way to the store. She passed a man sitting on a bench, sketching in a notebook, his face radiating quiet contentment. A woman jogged by, her expression one of pure determination, as if every step brought her closer to her passion. Even the baristas at the cafe earlier seemed to move in perfect harmony, clearly in their element. It was as if the world had shifted into some perfect version of itself, where everyone had found their calling. Maggie's stomach tightened as she pulled into her driveway, the weight of the day settling in. The laughter, the smiles, the overwhelming sense of satisfaction. It all felt surreal and too perfect. She quickly collected her groceries and rushed into her apartment, her haven from the unsettling aura of perfection that seemed to envelop everyone around her. How could everyone else be so content, so perfectly aligned with their passions, while she felt like she was just existing? The world outside her window seemed too vibrant, too flawless. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like a carefully crafted facade, one that taunted her with its perfection, mocking her unfulfilled aspirations. After putting away the groceries, she glanced out the window and noticed the sky had darkened. Was it that late already? The day had passed in a blur. With a sigh, she turned her attention to getting her uniform ready for work. She mentally ran through her usual Monday routine. Oh, that's right, she reminded herself. I need to meet with Mr. Carrollson about booking the VIP hall for this week's seminar, since the large banquet hall is undergoing emergency renovations. Are you happy, Maggie? The thought surfaced unexpectedly. Is this really what you want? 2 years from now? 5? 10? The questions lingered, unsettling and impossible to ignore. No, I'm not happy, she whispered at first, then repeated louder. I'm not happy. I'm a 29-year-old front office supervisor, stuck in a monotonous routine, she cried out, her voice breaking as tears spilled down her cheeks. Her voice trembled with frustration as she continued, her emotions pouring out unchecked. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't the life I dreamed of. She dropped to the floor, fists tightly clenched, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with every breath. My dreams, my life, everyone around me is thriving, doing what they love, and I'm just stuck. The realization crushed her. The contrast between her stagnant reality and the world's perfect harmony pressing in like an unbearable weight. Seeing her friends last night had left her feeling small, inadequate. They had all progressed into their ideal careers. And when the conversation had focused on her, she attempted to joke and dismiss it with a nonchalant, "Oh, I just changed direction." But the truth was harder to admit. even to herself. Somewhere along the way, ambition had quietly given way to stability. The drive she once had, the fire that pushed her forward, had dimmed, replaced by routine and practicality. And now, as she neared 30, she woke each morning with a dull, persistent ache of regret, haunted by the question, why had I just simply settled for this life? She had long since convinced herself that she was fine, that comfort and security were enough. But were they? Seeing her friends thrive, their eyes alight with passion for the things they loved, had stirred something restless inside her. Do you keep going like this? Waking up every day to the same boring routine, letting time slip through your fingers? Or do you finally take a stand, make a change, and pursue the life and career you truly want? The thought gave her chills. Change was terrifying, but an unfulfilled life was worse. If she didn't decide now, would she still be here years from now, trapped in the same cycle, suffocating under the weight of what-ifs? She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. The choice was hers. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to take the steps necessary to make the change. Maggie felt the weight of the day finally lift, the uneasiness that had clung to her dissipating. As she climbed into bed, a sense of determination settled over her. She was ready to embrace change, to carve out a future she truly wanted. Soon after she drifted to sleep, a loud, thunderous boom jolted her awake. Her eyes snapped open, blinking rapidly as she tried to gather her bearings. Rain pounded against the window, the storm outside mirroring the confusion swirling inside her. Half asleep, she reached for her phone. The screen lit up. 5:34 a.m. Sunday. Squinting, she frowned. Wait, Sunday? Did I read that right? She gasped, sitting up quickly, her heart racing. That couldn't be right. She had just lived through an entire day. She had gone shopping, talked to Jen, seen Tim, struggled with her emotions. How could it possibly be Sunday morning again? Scrambling for answers, she lunged for the TV remote and turned it on. The menu flashed across the screen. Sunday, 5:35 a.m. Her pulse roared in her ears. Oh, my goodness. Was it all just a dream? She whispered, her mind racing to make sense of it. A breathless, incredulous laugh escaped her. It was all just a dream. A weird, unsettling dream. Yet, as the initial shock settled, another thought took its place. It had felt so real, so vivid, like she had actually lived it. But more than that, it had forced her to confront the very things she had been avoiding. Her doubts, her fears, and her regrets. Seeing her friends had been the catalyst, but the dream had been the wake-up call. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't merely just a dream. Maybe it was a sign to stop waiting for the world to change for her. There's still time to pursue her dreams and embrace new beginnings. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be exciting. Monochromatic. This story includes depictions of mental health and death. There is nothing graphic, but these topics are touched on. I had never been quite fond of Eve. As her psychiatric nurse, the buoy who kept her from drowning in an ocean of madness, I should have made an effort to respect my patient. I should have, and yet I couldn't. It was unbearable to deal with a soul so far gone, someone so dreadfully insane. Nonetheless, Evelyn Barrett was still mine to care for, my own burden. It was odd to dwell on the fact that someone so young, barely even 18 to be exact, could mentally fall down such a slippery slope. Eve was admitted to the sanitarium around 2 months ago, following her breakdown at school. According to her classmates, Eve had never been social. She tended to keep to herself when given the choice. And while this was not abnormal behavior for a teenage girl, it had always been different with Eve. Well, it had grown to become different. Students began reporting incidents involving Eve. They would hear her muttering to herself in class, her words unintelligible, but her whispers crazed. They would hear her sobbing in bathroom stalls. Her teachers noticed her grades slipping. Eve would write ominous messages on her papers, and she would draw horrific drawings in her notebook. Drawings of characters plucked straight from horror movies, monsters. Though her behavior was abnormal, Eve caused no problems. She remained silent, which was nothing out of the ordinary. She basked in the endless insanity of her paranoid, twisted mind. But at that time, no one was aware of how truly twisted it was. After months of containment, Eve suddenly exploded. She jumped up in the middle of class and shrieked, screaming bloody murder. Accounts of the story from her classmates explained that Eve screamed, "Leave me alone," dozens of times. According to the witnesses, Eve was not talking to a specific person, not one that anyone could see anyway. Her teachers restrained her and subdued her screams. Her behavior was, according to her classmates, purely and utterly horrifying, insane. And so, I was stuck with Evelyn Barrett. I tried to build connections with my patients, and usually, I was successful. Over my years as a nurse, I liked to think that my psychological support helped my patients heal. It did. There was no doubt about it. I did my job well, until Eve came along. For some odd reason, I could not break through with Eve, break into her subconscious and heal her fragile mind. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would do one of two things. Either she would completely block me out, or she would scream nonsense at me. In any case, neither method was beneficial in the slightest. The past 2 months had consisted of pointless therapy sessions and no progress whatsoever. I couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor girl. As I walked into my tidy office, I pushed out a sigh and slumped into my armchair. Eve was scheduled to meet with me at any second, and to be quite honest, I was dreading our session. Up until now, my day had been calm. My serenity was about to be interrupted simply by being in the presence of the crazed child. 3 knocks on the door was all it took. My spine straightened, and I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. My automatic physical response whenever Eve was near. The creaking of the door disturbed my therapeutic silence, and as I watched a caretaker escort Eve through the doorway, a queasy feeling began to form in my gut. Eve seemed on edge today, more on edge than normal. Her long cascade of honey blonde hair was ruffled, as though she couldn't be bothered to run a comb through it. Her face was a sickly shade of white. The shadows casted upon her face complemented the lack of life within her frozen, gray eyes. Eyes that hardly looked like eyes at all. She looked dreadful. The caretaker made sure that Eve settled comfortably on the couch before taking her leave. Nevertheless, Eve looked nothing but uncomfortable. She brought her knees to her chest and hugged them tightly, her body resembling something of a ball. Her hands shook while her feet tapped on the cushion over and over again. It was easy to assume that nerves had Eve in a chokehold. "How are you doing today, Eve?" I asked the girl, my voice visibly annoyed. I didn't care enough to put on a facade for her. Eve wasn't fond of me, as far as I could tell. It was obvious by the way her eyes ever so slightly cut into my face, as though they were 2 honed knives. Regardless, the feeling was mutual, and so treating one another this way had become routine. Usually when I asked her a question, Eve ignored it completely. I assumed she would simply ignore me by the way her gaze dug into my skin, and so I wasted no time before pulling out my notebook. Lazily, I jotted down a note. "Silence," I wrote. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I heard a raspy breath emerge from her mouth. "He's going to kill me soon," Eve muttered, her voice barely a whisper. I could hardly comprehend her words. Her empty eyes widened as her fingernails dug into her pants. The girl rocked back and forth in a crazed manner, almost as though she truly feared for her life. I, for one, believed that Eve was bananas, but as her nurse, I could not disregard such an alarming phrase. Who's going to kill you?" I asked, as calmly as possible. Though I knew that Eve was completely mad, I knew that she was. Her words still managed to send a chill through my bones. Eve disregarded my words for a moment, her mind unable to flee from whatever eternal nightmare it was trapped in. Her gaze remained on the ground and focused on anything but me. Seconds ticked by. Minutes. Finally, Eve's eyes snapped to mine, somehow more frantic than before. He's taking over my life, the world around me, everything. She snapped loudly, her sharp words making me flinch. Her body recoiled after her outburst, and she scrunched back into her ball with a shaken expression on her face. "He's going to kill me soon," she repeated. "I just know it." With a sigh, I set my notebook aside and leaned forward. This wasn't the first time that Eve had acted up during a session, but this was the first time that she seemed so sure. So sure about the fact that something was bothering her. I said, "You are safe here, Eve. Nothing is going to kill you. This is all in your mind, okay? You're okay." "No, please, Debbie. I am not insane. This is real," Eve persisted. Hearing her say my name was odd. She had never addressed me before, and until now, I did not know that she even knew my name. He's out to get me. The Shadow Man. He's the Shadow Man?" I repeated incredulously. Despite Eve's urgency, I did not believe her words. Her crazed, perplexing words. She had never once opened up to me like this, and so I had no reason to believe that she was telling the truth now. Instead of dismissing her comment, I wanted to dig further. It was my job, after all. "Who is he?" Eve shuddered, as though a gust of icy wind had blown through the room. "I don't know." She paused abruptly and locked eyes with me. "But he takes things from me. He steals them." Despite my confusion, I played into her claim. "What does he take from you?" Eve blinked multiple times. "Color. Color? The color that I see. The color that she sees. What does that mean, Eve?" I asked, and anxiety grasped my brain. Her answer, while strange, was also oddly specific. And something about that was off-putting. Color blindness. Was that what Eve was hinting at? Were colors fading from her vision? I took my assumption and rolled with it. "Does your family have a history of color blindness?" That sounded about right. Perhaps Eve was losing her sense of color, and she was freaking out about it. That wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, but it was obviously nothing to go crazy about. No, it's not color blindness. He takes the color from me." She snapped again, her expression flushing with maroon fury. "You're wrong. I am not crazy. You think I am, but I'm not. I'm not." Suddenly, Eve was on her feet, marching across the room to my desk. I sat up out of habit and hesitated. Eve seemed angry. Was she going to attack me? Grab for a weapon? I decided to take no chances, and I, too, rose to my feet. I turned to face Eve, only to find that she was inspecting various objects on my desk. Colored pens, Post-its, my computer. It's all black and white. Everything. She picked up a lime green post-it and shook it in her hand. I can't tell what color this is. He stole it from me. It's gone. It's all gone. He's gonna kill me once everything is gone. Eve, calm down. No, I can't. Eve paused abruptly when her eyes fell upon a particular object on my desk. Her mouth gaped open as she snatched the object, inspecting it in awe. I almost reached for her arm and demanded for her to put the object down, but I restrained myself. Eve held the card that my daughter had made for me years ago. On the front of the card was a drawing of a rainbow, colored messily with crayon. My daughter had handcrafted the card when I fell terribly ill, and I believe that the card itself had cured me. I had kept it lying on my desk all these years, and the messy rainbow had been my constant reminder that color can supply us with life and wellness. And now, as Eve's shaky hands grasped the card, I fought the urge to snatch it from her. This card was precious to me. I couldn't risk her ruining it. It's colorful. She gasped in awe, her eyes absorbing the card as though its sparkles were emitting from it. I can see the rainbow. He hasn't stolen it from me. Suddenly, Eve's guard was up once again, and she clenched the card against her chest. I winced as the paper grew crinkled in her strong grasp. I need to keep this card with me. I can't let the Shadow Man steal it. It's all I have left. Protectively, I shook my head. My deranged patient could not be trusted with my precious card, my personal gift from my daughter. No, I don't think that's... Debbie, please, Eve urged. For one moment, the desperation in her voice made her sound sane. This is life or death. I am not insane. He is going to kill me. I can't let him steal the color from this. It's all I have. Please. Hesitance gripped me by the throat, and I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Eve stared me down, and her empty eyes were suddenly not empty anymore. They weren't lifeless. Instead, they seemed brighter, filled with life, with hope. I had never seen this side of Evelyn Barrett before. I stuttered. Nothing is going to happen to you, Eve. You don't need this card. But as I said these words, even I heard the doubt within my voice. I felt that I would regret keeping the card. Perhaps if I gave Eve the card to borrow, she would feel more at ease. Perhaps this card was the key to break through into Eve's mind. Perhaps she wasn't so far gone. Reluctantly, I backed away from the girl. Just keep it for now. That's fine, I sighed. Eve's eyes sparkled, and a hint of a smile pricked at her lips. She looked normal, as though she didn't live in a sanitarium. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, she repeated hastily. Just return it to me when you no longer need it. Of course, Eve's mannerism was completely different than it had been when she first arrived. As she continued inspecting the card in awe, I couldn't help but smile. Perhaps I could help her. Perhaps the Eve that I was not quite fond of was fading, and a new girl was coming to light. Either way, I felt the start of something new. Hope. The next day, I was scheduled to check up on Eve. The feeling of apprehension that usually sat in the pit of my stomach was gone. Ever since our session yesterday, I had faith that my patient was healing, truly healing. I walked with optimism, hopeful that my relationship with Eve was growing stronger. One of the best feelings as a therapist was knowing that you were of aid to your patient, that you were able to dig them out of a great hole. It felt rewarding, fulfilling. I approached Eve's door and knocked gently so as not to startle her. Though she was in the process of healing, she was still fragile. I waited for a few seconds before knocking again. Eve did not respond, and I heard no noise from inside the room. The queasy feeling in my stomach returned. I knocked louder. No response. To accompany my uneasiness, an alarm resonated through my skull. Something was wrong. Skeptically, I pushed open the door and took a quick glance around the room. It didn't take long for me to spot her. Eve. She was sprawled out on the ground, unconscious. Without hesitation, I crouched on the floor next to her, shaking her shoulder. "Eve? Eve?" I blurted. There was no response. She didn't move. "No, Eve. Wake up." My chest felt light as I reached for Eve's delicate wrist. There was no pulse. In fact, her skin was a block of ice. "Oh my God, Eve." Numbly, my eyes trailed over towards her hand. Her fingers limply held a little slip of paper with a rainbow on it. The card that my daughter made. The next few moments were a blur. My body began moving on its own, while my mind remained stuck on the image of Eve's body on the floor. Her still, pale body. As I unconsciously grabbed the card out of Eve's limp hand and shoved it in my pocket, I heard muffled voices entering the bedroom, scrambling around me, asking me what had happened. I didn't process the question, couldn't process it. All of my senses were honed in on Eve, on the fact that she was dead. Nurses surrounded Eve and I, and before I knew it, I was laying on the ground too, losing consciousness. I felt as though I was floating in outer space, and it became a struggle to breathe. My vision was fading into a deep darkness, and everyone near me was fading. The nurses, Eve, everything was fading. I was grasping onto nothing. But no, something was still there, hidden in the corner of my periphery. Though it blended within the darkness overtaking my mind, it wasn't completely hidden. I saw it. Him, though hardly visible. I was still able to make out the silhouette of a large man standing in the corner of the room. He hardly looked like a man at all, really. As far as I could tell, he had no hair, no face. He looked like an apparition by the way he blended into the wall behind him. He was the absence of everything, a void where light should have been. It was impossible to make out the distinct features of the man. But even with a blurry glimpse, I knew that the man was something of a sinister entity. Evil. As I blacked out, 2 words repeatedly rang in my head. They reverberated deeply, their consonants sounding of menacing death knells. It was all I heard as I lost consciousness. Shadow man, shadow man, shadow man. I woke up with a start on the couch in my office. My thoughts immediately trailed to what I last could remember. They trailed to Eve. She had died. Was that all a dream? What if it wasn't? What was the cause of her death? She was healthy, physically at least. Nothing made sense. The shadowed silhouette grazed my thoughts, and a chill fell over my body. I must have been imagining the man. I had not been in the right state of mind, nearly on the brink of passing out. It was an illusion. It had to be. So why was it that Eve had also been hallucinating a shadow man? A lump in my pocket alerted my senses, and I reached for whatever was inside. My fingers lifted out a piece of crinkled paper, scrunched up in a ball. The card. It was ruined, shoved in my pocket like a piece of trash. As my eyes welled up with tears, I unfolded the paper and examined the rainbow on the front. I blinked multiple times and wiped away the tears from my eyes. Something wasn't right. My vision was playing games with me. As I stared at the card, at the sloppy rainbow on the front, my heart dropped as I realized something. Eve wasn't crazy. The rainbow on the front of the card was no longer drawn in colorful crayon. It was purely black and white. Is that a train? With extreme speed, the wind brushed against my face, blew my hair into my eyes, and tangled it around my head and neck. I clawed at the long red strands as I watched clouds begin to swirl, moving into a large circular motion. 12 o'clock, noon, and the skies were as dark as night. The few clouds that showed up against the dark sky were as huge, grayish, white pillows running across the sky. The wind became swifter and colder in a matter of seconds. I ran towards the house for shelter as fast as my legs could carry me. Then the rain came. Large, hard drops that pelted my unprotected head with a fierceness I had never experienced. I slammed through the door, ran about the house, closing all the windows that were opened to beat the heat and humidity. The wind whistled through the walls of the old clapboard homestead with a vengeance. Down the 6 steep steps to the basement, I ran, spotted the old handheld radio, and quickly grabbed it. Rolling through the channels, there was nothing but static. I tore the back off to check for batteries. Empty. Stumbling across the bold orange, black, and yellow, striped outdoor carpet. I headed back up the stairs toward the kitchen. My anxious pull on the utility storage drawer was more aggressive than intended. It flew across the room, slammed against the opposite wall as its contents soared around the room. I located the batteries and began to move in that direction. Then, out went the lights. I had lived in that house my entire life, 35 years. But it was still difficult to find my way across the room on my hands and knees in the dark. Finally, I made it across the room. In the process, I rammed my head into the cabinet door. The batteries lay within reach. After slamming the batteries into the old radio, I ran back to the basement to find a flood. Water rising, now licked at the 2nd step from the bottom. Suddenly, the rain stopped, and the wind stopped blowing. It was too quiet. I looked out the back door window. The sky, still black as night, made it hard to see what was going on in the sky above. I looked all around. Nothing but blackness. There was a deafening sound. I looked around to find the source, but it was too dark to see anything from my viewpoint. The leaves on the trees rustled, then fell to the ground. The noise was so intense, I thought I was hearing things. A low whistle, accompanied by a chuka, 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 mixed with a loud scream that grew into something painful. I covered my ears with my hands, unsure if the scream came from me or elsewhere. I ran from the house and across the street to my neighbor's yard and the safety of their basement home. As a child, both of my parents worked nights. They had instructed me, as well as my 3 siblings. If there is ever a chance of a tornado, run across the street to the Williams house. Their entire home is a basement and the safest place to be in a bad storm. We lived in the Midwest, where I still resided, and people had called our area Tornado Alley because the tornadoes almost always came right through our neighborhood. This caused destruction, with much expense for replacing things like roofs, sheds, cars, and trucks, and sometimes even livestock. As an adult, I still take my parents' instructions to heart and run to my neighbor's house when necessary. Alice opened the door and dragged me in. That's when I saw the source of the eerie sound. "Is that a train?" I asked Alice, my neighbor, even as the question sounded ludicrous to my ears. A train in the sky? That was impossible, wasn't it? "No, Opal dear. That's a funnel cloud," Alice answered. "A what?" I looked out the window after she shut the door behind me. A tornado. She dragged me away from the door. "Come, we must hurry." She rushed us into the middle of the house, sat me on the floor next to a sofa placed against the wall, and covered us with a heavy blanket. The train was now overhead. I remember being in many tornadoes as a kid, but I don't remember hearing anything like the noise I heard then. I was more afraid during that storm than I had ever been before. After the train sounds left and the rain started coming down again, Alice went into the kitchen to make us some sweet hot cocoa with marshmallows. Alice was the daughter of the people that I had run too many years ago, and the cocoa recipe was one of her mom's. I would never have told my own mother this, but it was the best I had ever had. When we heard the all-clear sirens, we opened the door and looked out at the sun-shining afternoon. Alice's yard had no large trees for branches to break off of, or leaves to clutter her lawn. But the family always had a huge garden with potatoes, carrots, lettuce, tomatoes, and many other things like stalks of corn and assorted colors of peppers. Unfortunately for Alice, it looked like there was going to be a lot of canning going on at her house very soon. There were trees that grew to the side of their house along the roadside, but they were evergreens, stout and dense. I remember hiding behind them to block the wind as we waited for the school bus. There was an entire row of 6, and on frigid days, other kids would walk to the Williamses' yard just to use the tree block. Sometimes 7 or 8 of us, all huddled there together for warmth. The evergreens were planted there as protection from high winds and storms. It seemed to work. At least it worked that day. I looked across the road toward my house and noticed the roof would need some shingles replaced, something I had learned to do at an early age, since we lost them so many times. Most insurance companies want to charge a premium for living in that area now, due to recurring claims, but it's worth it most of the time. If it's only a few shingles, I normally wouldn't have bothered with the claims. I would just do the job and have done with it. That practice also kept my policy premiums down. When I got home, I toured the house looking for damage, which was aplenty. 2 broken windows. Our shed had blown over the fence into my next-door neighbor's yard, crumbled against one of their trees into a large metal ball. Other than the flooded basement, the rest of the house looked in surprisingly decent shape. The water in the basement would recede in time, and with the application of a little mold repellent, the standing water cleanup should be fairly easy. I now know what a tornado sounds like. I guess I've been lucky over the years. That was the only time I was that close to a tornado. I used to hear stories from folks in the area talking about seeing and hearing a tornado. Each tale was just a little different. Some said it was like an airplane coming in for a landing. Others said it was like a car crash with metal tearing and brakes squealing. I only ever heard one person say, it sounded like a freight train. Wheels rolling over tracks, brakes squealing, and cars swaying from side to side as they took the curves. I can attest. That is the sound I believe a tornado to be like. A train. Warm tea, but odd aftertaste. The overgrown azaleas, camellias, and kudzu-covered trees engulf my grandmother's old country house with its petite porch and large windows. Perfume from the spring garden swirls around in the late morning air. After knocking on the door, my Aunt Arlene opens it slowly, and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls escapes from the faint teal door. By the looks of the house, Arlene has not kept up appearances, nor simple maintenance. The paint's peeling, boards broken on porch, and even shingles missing from the roof are major issues I calculate in my first 5 minutes here. My aunt inherits the house after Nan, my grandmother, who died under questionable circumstances. Come in, my sweet boy, Aunt Arlene says as she waves me in. I'm so glad you came. I haven't seen my Aunt Arlene since my father's service. She hardly spoke to anyone there, and her reasoning is it's her only bother, and losing him meant she is all alone now, even though I'm still here. It causes her such great pain she didn't even come to the reading of his will. For Christ's sakes, it was just me, for my mother passed away from breast cancer 3 years ago, and my grandparents died about 15 years ago. So I am the only other family she has. She shuffles across the vestibule towards the front sitting room. The morning sun bakes the overly stuffed room. Please have a seat, my dear. She motions towards a chair near a coffee table. Then she sits across from me on a satin love seat. Underneath the sugary sweet smell of rolls lies a stale, almost mildew stank that stings my nose. The coffee table has stacks of mail and smut novels, along with a sterling silver tray with tiny teacups, sugar dish, and dessert plates. Over the fireplace, cobwebs blanket the matching pair of candelabras, with a trail leading to dancing figurines, which are broken in this place and that. I'm sorry about your father, she says, while her jowls jiggle among a slit mouth. She brings up a handkerchief to the corner of her lips. Her head and hands shake a bit, as if she's strung up by marionette threads and the puppeteer isn't paying attention. I'm sorry as well. I know you and Dad were so close, I add. When I adjust my khakis pants, a loud pop comes from the chair cushion, so I gently lean back with my hands on my knees to avoid moving again, just waiting for the chair to cave in. Aunt Arlene straightens her lace collar on her well-pressed dress, like she didn't hear the my ass breaking the chair. You know your parents always wanted to give you a little sister, but I believe your mother only wanted a girl she could dress up in fancy little dresses. Arlene sighs. She tinkers her dainty gold watch on her wrist. It's so small, I doubt she could even read it. This place seems to have paused the minute my grandpap died. Even the grandfather clock in the corner, which keeps eternal hands at 10 and 2. I don't know how old my aunt is, but when I was little, I would pretend that she was like 110. She carries herself all hunched over with gnarled hands that look like they don't even open anymore. The hair she keeps in perfect curls tight to her head, with the typical old lady hat adorning the top with the matching gloves. She is defiantly older than my father, by 20 years at least, because the endless griping over his birth. Aunt Arlene would have been an only child if it wasn't for him. Then, being a boy, my grandparents adore him and spoiled him to no end. When they became adults, he was given the family cattle ranch along with the larger homestead. But as I said before, they didn't completely write out Arlene. I just don't think they trusted her to manage the business. Her anger got the better of her one time, and she threatened my dad that she would get her share by any means. So how are things going? Good, I guess. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to take over the ranch, though, I said. Well, I can understand that. You're still so immature to have such a large responsibility over so many people and money, she says with tight lips. My eyes about popped out of my head, and how can she sit there staring at me as if that's not an insult? You know that I've graduated with a master's in agricultural sciences with a BS in business. And not only that, I've worked for Dad since I could walk. I've spent the last 3 years working on networking and research to increase production. I can feel my face boiling red, for Aunt Arlene knows all of this. She constantly interferes with my dad's decisions to include me in any of the family business. She clears her throat. It's one thing to wrangle calves down in front of a crowd to impress young farm girls. It's another to manage $1 million cattle ranch with trucks and employees. I'm still not sure why your father didn't place me on the executive committee. I mean, at least until you're old enough to make managerial decisions. The ranch hands don't even trust you yet. And some bits of paper isn't going to get you respect in this field. She claps her mouth shut. My chest tightens, and I feel like my head is about to explode all over this ugly antique rug. Deep breaths. Take deep breaths. I run my hands down my face and squeeze my eyes shut. My Aunt Arlene has always been like this, though. She believes we didn't run the ranch how Grandpap wanted, and he would be disappointed in my dad. I just want to tell her, then why the hell didn't he give you the ranch instead? The grudge she holds against my dad seems to have gone to the grave, which is a damn shame. Well, Arlene, my dad has already proven. Ringing came from the kitchen. She promptly stood up. I've baked us some goodies, my dear boy." She gave me the oddest smile. She locks her heavily wrinkled eyes to mine, which appear to be shiny, then smiles with every single tooth. Her stare sets into my soul, but breaks when a whistle from a kettle starts. As she turns to walk toward the door, she twirls on her toes, as if she is floating across the maple floor, and disappears. I hear clanking of china and spoons coming from the dark hallway. Then oven door opens and closes. "Why don't you help me for a second?" she bellows. As I get up from the chair, the spring bounces back into place with a crack. I shake my head. I'm not sure why I came. I wander down the damp hallway towards a swinging kitchen door that looks like a portal to another world. "Here." She hands me a small carafe. "Could you please add some milk to this?" She plates the pan of hot rolls onto a floral china platter. "Can you carry the milk and teapot for me? There's too much to juggle here." She turns and vanishes from the kitchen. I try to follow her, but my knuckles are burning just a bit from the side of hot teapot. So by the time I make it back to the sitting room, she is ready to hand me a place with a cinnamon roll on it. "How do you like your tea?" she asks. But before I can say, she starts humming Old Rugged Cross. I decide to change seats, for I am certain that the chair is on the edge of collapse. "I like a little sugar. No milk," I answer, while dropping into the love seat. She clinks around the serving tray, mixing the teas. "Here you go, my dear." She smiles again, passing me the cup and saucer. "Is there a reason you asked me here?" "I'm kind of busy dealing with all this stuff with Dad," I said, while taking a sip of dark tea. It hit really strong and bitter, almost like eating soap. I couldn't help but to screw up my face and swallow hard. Well then, down the hatch, I held my breath and suck the rest of the cup. I didn't think you could screw up tea, but there's always a first. So here's to the cinnamon rolls for being better. I hold it up as if I'm toasting my dad. The first bite proves it to be edible. "Oh, no real reason. I just wanted to see my only nephew," Arlene answers with a blow and sip of tea. She takes a deep breath of tea in and continues to sip her tea. "To my understanding, it's just the two of us now, no other relatives," she says. "Is there a young lady in the picture?" No," I say. Cough. Another bite. I put the teacup on the table. "I'm not seeing anyone right now. You need more tea," she says. But before I could answer no, she snatches the cup and fills it with more and adds more sugar. Here I added more sugar to it. She hands the cup back, and I take a sip. Nope, just as bitter as before. Another cough. I made a new flavor of tea. It's a bit darker than my usual, but I didn't think it was that strong. Want me to add some milk? She reaches out for my cup again. I wave my hand to decline and chug the remaining. Cough. A pain in my stomach slams into my ribs, and the cinnamon roll tries to run up my throat. I'm not feeling too... But before I could get the words out, the world blurs, and my head feels like it's full of lead, and I feel my body slide down the love seat to the floor. Well, my darling nephew, I've grown tired of you and your father taking from me, and now I'm finally getting what is rightfully mine. I hope you enjoy your last meal. I really do think the oleander tea tastes better with some milk. Aunt Arlene's large smile fades to black. Colorless heart. Set your story in a world that has lost all color. Colorless Heart by Lucy Apadu. Marie roused from sleep in the double bed inside the Paris Hilton Hotel. She sank into the comfort of the silky sheets and the fresh fabric smell. A smile splashed across her face, unable to open her eyes just yet. Freedom at last. Just her. No one else. No jumping on eggshells. Not being caught off guard. No secrets. No lies. Just Marie. No other soul in this room. Away from him. But it wasn't only about liberation. It was about protection. Keeping her loved ones safe. She had to keep them alive. And this was the only way. Freedom for herself, but separation from her loved ones. But that one person foremost in her brain. Salvatore. Marie had recently attended a gun range and learned how to fire a gun, just in case. She never knew when she might need to use it. It was about protection. The alarm on her mobile phone jerked her fully awake. A yawn filtered through as she slowly opened her eyes and spotted her phone on the dull black bedside table that had been brown yesterday. The white cushions that had been hues of purple. The black curtains that had been taupe. The ash black carpet beneath the bed that had been gray. And the black sky through a gap in the window curtain that had been blue. No more blue skies. No more shades other than black and white. The world had lost its color. Marie's breath quickened as her heart palpitated. She rose from bed and rubbed her eyes hard. It had to be her eyes. Had she suddenly become colorblind? Where were all the bright, vibrant colors when it was what she needed? She shut, then opened her eyes, but nothing changed. Her world was drab, colorless, soulless. Her shoulders slumped over, her head bowed. A slow chill ran up and down her spine. Curiosity piqued. Her skin reddened and turned hot. She had no choice but to be here in this colorless world. What had happened overnight to turn her entire world into a shroud of darkness with only black and white in its midst?
Then
Marie wandered outside the hotel, lost in a world where she knew no one. She had left Melbourne to make a fresh start in Paris so nobody would find her. So he couldn't find her. She couldn't believe having woken up in a fog with shades of gray and black blocking her view of natural color, light, and even shades of gray. A bench with a view of the River Seine looked inviting as she made her way over, put her bag down, and stared at the calm ripples, with a view of the majestic Eiffel Tower, sailing boats anchored in the water, bunched up trees, and riders swinging their arms inside canoes. The wind scraped her face in the winter. Nothing but black and white. Marie flashed back to her former life, back home, where she worked as an interior designer, married to a man she didn't love, and friends who would most likely understand her escape. Yesterday, her world was dark, but today, after she awoke, it became darker, grittier, and scarier. Did this lack of color mean something? Could she no longer design with color to refresh old homes or design new ones if she wanted to start over in France? She had not wrung anyone except her best friend, Helena, about her sudden escape for their own protection. With a call from a burner phone, she announced her safe arrival. "Do you have color? Or has the world changed?" Helena replied. "What are you talking about? The things in the world. They're in black and white, Helena. I woke up this morning and nothing was in color. No blues, browns, pinks, purples, yellows, or any color. All gone. Is Melbourne the same? Don't be silly, Marie. We still have color. Have you become colorblind? Had your eyes checked? You couldn't have become colorblind in an instant. Go get them tested. Oh, and please stay safe. I don't know when I'll call you next. You know how he is. He could be tracking this conversation, even if it's on a burner phone. I love you, Marie, and I'm glad you're safe now. One day, we'll be together again." Marie fought back tears after ending the call. She would miss her loved ones, but she still didn't get what was going on. Was she the crazy one, or did only Paris lose its color? With a sigh, Marie rose and made her way back to the hotel, knowing she'd have to find herself permanent residence. As she crossed the wide road, a towering man brushed her shoulder. "Oh, sorry." He locked eyes with her and walked ahead of her on the other side of the road. His broad shoulders and black eyes made her shudder, stopping in his tracks. "I have a message to give you." She angled her head. "Who are you?" "Here, take this," he said. She retrieved the note. He watched her. Who the hell was this guy? And why was he making her nervous? "Who are you?" "I'm just the messenger, lady. Read the note." "Who sent you?" He inched his way closer. "Benny did. Now read the note." "No. Not again." He found her. Would this bastard ever leave her alone? With a shuddering breath, She unfolded the note, her hands shaking and the back of her neck sweating. Bits of her skin prickled. What was this? She had to be dreaming as she read the note, her vision blurred as if the words weren't real. The threat wasn't real. Meet me in front of the Louvre tomorrow morning, 900 a.m. sharp, or someone you love dies. The same old threats again. How did he find me? The man bared his crooked teeth with a smile. He swaggered off into the distance. It wasn't over. It never would be. The next morning, Marie paced her steps towards the Louvre, a queue that was a mile long. She wondered if anyone would ever reach the entrance to the museum. The glass panels of the building distracted her from the enemy she was about to meet. Each step drew her closer to the devil. When would it end? Her breath hitched as she stepped on uneven ground, razor-sharp pain cutting into her lower back as she fought the gust of frozen wind. She had to free herself, but how? He would always find her, threaten her, obsess over her, and abuse her. She'd been abused for 3 torturous years. Storm clouds brewed when Marie drew closer to the swarms of people. It was almost 9 o'clock, and passers-by stared at her as if she as an alien. Was it obvious she was heading towards her death chamber, to her dreaded foe? A cold caress at the back of her neck made her freeze in her spot. She turned. It was him, Benny. In all his wealthy glamour, the bastard wore a black tie, black buttoned-up suit jacket over a black cashmere jumper, with black pleated pants over Italian leather shoes. He smelled rich. "Follow me," he said, as he prodded her towards an unknown destination. They walked in silence as his intermittent glares unnerved her. The squeeze of his arm draped through hers, leaving bruises, but she said nothing. His pinch at the back of her neck made her flinch, but she said nothing. The push and pull of her hair strands made her want to cry out, but she didn't. Hidden pain to display her fake strength. When, finally, she sat down outside the cafe with its outdoor setting, he ordered hot drinks and croissants. No one does what you did and gets away with it. She swallowed, her lip trembling as she stared past him. "Please don't hurt him," he chuckled and threw his head back, his stained white teeth prominent. Flicking a cigarette over an ashtray, he tilted his head. "You're lucky I love you, Marie. If I didn't love you, you'd be dead by now. But you ever try something like this again, and I won't hesitate to slash your throat. Feed your decrepit body to the fish in the Seine River. Got that?" She nodded, a black spot clouding her vision. Puffs of smoke floated towards her and made her cough. Not that he cared. He was a narcissist. He retrieved his phone. Watch this. No, I mean business, Marie. I don't blow damn smoke up my arse. She gripped the phone and saw him, tied up to a chair, gagged, beaten, tortured. 2 black eyes, bruising across his cheek, haggard, frail, head hanging down low as if giving up. No, don't give up, my love. Never give up. A gasp of air grounded her. Rattling teeth must have made her look scared in front of him. Is he all right? He scoffed. That depends on you. You put 1 foot wrong. Leave me again, and he dies. Only when we're safely back home, he'll be released. The waiter returned with the croissants and hot coffees. Sorry about the croissants. They're a little overcooked, but these are more their natural yellow. Marie winced. But those croissants are black, not yellow. He waved a hand. Don't mind her. She's the constant joker. But no worries. We'll have them as they are. The waiter nodded. Black, you say? Benny glared. Leave us. The waiter walked off with a curious gaze. He turned to her. What is wrong with you? Can't you see the color of the food? How could he not see what she was seeing? What was wrong with her? No, everything is black and white. I don't see color anymore. He laughed. Are you telling me you see the brown coffees, the blue ashtray, the beige tablecloth, my red tie, my dashing blue eyes? Her heart missed a beat as she gritted her teeth. No, I lost sight of color this morning. I woke up like this. Everything is black and white. Interesting, he said. Marie looked past him and spotted the man she'd seen earlier. The one who had given her the note. He was standing by a lamppost, sculling a bottle of beer. Why was he around? He must have been Benny's bodyguard, in case she made a run for it. Marie and Benny stepped inside her hotel room. He pushed her towards the wardrobe. Start packing. Our flight leaves in a few hours. Okay then. She pushed aside her floating tears and steeled herself by pulling out her suitcase from underneath the bed, unzipping it. As if in a surreal world, she pulled clothing off hangers and threw them into the suitcase. She was going back to her prison, away from the love of her life. If only she had been stronger a few years ago, when he had framed her ex-boyfriend, Salvatore, for murder, just so he could be free from prison. She was forced to marry him. Marriage to Benny in exchange for Salvatore's freedom. She had never explained why she'd broken up with him. Had to convince Salvatore she no longer loved him. It had cut her insides, but she had to keep him safe. Salvatore had not given up on her and found ways for them to meet secretly. But Benny always found out about their secret rendezvous. He had put plans in place, made the worst things happen. Benny involved in Salvatore crashing his car, ruining his reputation in business, injuring his friend with a beating by his henchmen, and almost killing him at least twice. Now Salvatore was threatened with death. What more could the creep do? "I'm having a shower," he said. She sat on the bed. How could she go back with him? But she had no choice when Salvatore would die if she didn't. Benny's phone lay on the bedside table. Curious, she picked it up and found his recording. Salvatore was still tied to the chair, still tortured and broken. But wait, something was weird about this video. The actions were the same. His movements repeated in a cycle as if it was on a loop. This wasn't her true love life. This was a fake video. It had to be. Could Salvatore have arranged this? Outsmarted Benny again, she smiled to herself. Now she had a chance to do something. Fight him. Hurt him. But no, she wasn't a violent person and had morals. Nothing like Benny. Nothing. What could she do? Run away again? But Benny might pursue Salvatore and never stop. He would never stop finding her until his own death. She knew that. So what could she do? She could never reason with a crazy person. A knock on the door made her jolt in her spot. It could be anyone. Her heart racing, she slowly opened the door and flinched when the man from earlier pushed past her. "Where's Benny? What are you doing here?" the man whispered in her ear. "Listen, Salvatore will set you free. Get out of here." She swallowed, her vision blurring. What? The back of her neck sweated as one ear listened in on Benny in the shower. "No time to talk. Leave. Now. We'll take care of this." She was right. It was a fake recording. He'd escaped. Where is he? The man swung the gun in his hand, scanning past her. "He's closer than you think. Go now." Her heart soared, and a spot of color flashed in her vision, but only fleetingly. It turned black and white again. What in hell is going on here? Benny grasped something from his back pocket. "Why are you here?" The man shrugged until reaching his side pocket and shooting towards Benny, who shifted to the side, the bullet grazing his cheek. But Benny pulled out his own gun and took aim. The gun hit the man square in the chest. He fell back against the door with a thud. Marie quaked. It was over. No love, no freedom. You will never leave me. Never, Marie. Get that. Nobody will ever take you away from me. Grab your things. Hurry up. He shifted the strange man's body to the bathroom, blood pouring out of him like a tap. When he returned, Benny shoved her aside and flung the remainder of her clothes into the suitcase. "Now zip it up, and let's leave pronto." He sat on the sofa and scrolled through his phone. A call to one of his stupid thugs. Goosebumps swarmed like insects over her arms as a dull ache at the back of her neck made her queasy. This had to stop. slowly zipping up the baggage. A shuffling sound underneath the bed made her think she was hearing things. But no. She spotted a shoe protruding from the corner as someone glided further to the edge near the bedside table. Salvatore appeared and placed a finger across his lips, hefting a gun. She moved towards Benny, pulled the suitcase off the bed, and retrieved her bag. "I'm ready." Salvatore flung himself in the open and approached Benny with an aim of his gun. "Put your hands up. Now." Benny flinched. "You have a death wish, don't you? You might have got away from my men, but you'll never win this war. I will fight you to the death, Benny. I don't care if I die so long as Marie goes free. Free from your dungeon. Free from your psychopathic world. You loser." He faced Marie. "Go now. I'll take care of this." She shook her head. "We fight with our hands. Fight to the death." Benny scoffed. "Fine with me." He shoved his pistol inside his back pocket and took a fighting stance while Salvatore did the same. "No, please, Salvatore. Just go. I can't be with you. Benny's my husband. I'm going back to Melbourne with him. Please leave." "No, Marie. Enough is enough." Benny threw the first punch, then another and another until he went down. He gouged one of Salvatore's eyes and flung his head hard against the carpet. Marie moved. "No, Benny, stop. I'll come with you. Please, stop." Benny softened, giving Salvatore the chance to pound into Benny with a blow to the kidney and then a swift kick in the leg. Lamps overturned, magazines tumbled in the air, and the coffee table shifted. Benny kicked him on the side of his abdomen, and he keeled over. She had to do something. But what? Benny reached for something in his pants pocket. A flick knife. No, no. He was going to break the rules. Not on her watch. Salvatore attempted to rise when Benny stepped forward. A smirk plastered over his face. He wandered over to him when the knife swung in the air. Marie reached for his back pocket, pulled out the gun, and aimed. "Stop, or I'll shoot," he scoffed. "You don't have the guts. Don't even know guns." Benny ignored her, about to stab Salvatore in the throat. Marie pulled the trigger and shot him twice in the stomach. The knife fell, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Blood seeped onto the carpet, and she watched and waited for the life force to draw out of him. 3 years of hell. 3 years of watching over her shoulder. 3 years of fearing the lives of her loved ones, walking quietly on eggshells. Those days were over as the rotten apple drew his last breath. Salvatore shuffled towards her and hugged her. "I love you, Marie. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from him. You've always protected me." She beamed. "I love you too, Salvatore." She savored the gentle caress of her lover's strong arms around her waist. Her eyes shifted, her surroundings vibrating with color. nor more colorless world. And then the red one enters. A great artist once said, "Color. What a deep and mysterious language, the language of dreams." Depending on the situation or distraction, this philosophy unquestionably plays an integral part in Herbert Truelove's meandering existence, floating and gliding from one state of contented, colorful contemplation to the next, regardless of the consequences. It is Tuesday. Spring has just about sprung, and a dapple of weak sunlight is finally threatening to break through the clouds that have been in perpetual domination since last October. At least it seems that way to Herb, who, as we speak, is in a daydream of sorts, caught between the grim reality of his humdrum day job and the fantastical scenes that his mind is playing out to him. Today, softly tinted marshmallow cats and dogs with expertly curated mustaches and jaunty little hats are fleeting across his venturing mind. Everything is odd and hazy around the edges. The sun's faint rays kiss the scene with hues of pale yellow, blue, and pink. And across the dusty blue sky, cloud-like forms are enticing him away to somewhere far beyond the gray walls of reality, where Herb's flesh and bones exist. True love? Shrill and pointed as ever, the bespectacled and suited Geraldine Ledbetter, a storm cloud personified, marches across the office and places herself between the window and Herb's reverie. She casts the darkest kind of shadow across the desk, perhaps the sort you might encounter in a terrible nightmare. Are the figures for the board meeting ready yet? The words thunder reverberating in Herb's ears. But he is not easily fazed. Herb has learned that it is best to do whatever is asked of him. Herb knows that it's wise to keep his head down and complete his work to an adequate standard so that it attracts minimal attention. Herb knows where his mind would rather be. The mustachioed marshmallow cats and dogs saunter away towards the rapidly graying clouds, and Herb, rubbing his eyes, waggles the gray plastic mouse to motion his laptop back into life. "Half an hour," mutters Herb, as he adjusts himself to the reality that surrounds him. The cats and dogs disappearing into the cloudy horizon. His tired eyes flicker across the incomplete spreadsheet that occupies the screen. Conditional formatting highlights the cells that need to be completed in a garish, bright yellow. As Herb knows from bitter experience, the department heads are notoriously tardy in submitting their month-end figures, and this month is no exception. And that will include the projections for the second quarter. The dark outline of Geraldine Ledbetter demands rather than questions. Of course, around the edge of Geraldine's heavy form, Herb can see a butterfly hovering outside the window, its golden-tipped wings unusually early for the time of year, but splendid all the same as it flutters in the mid-morning light on my desk by 11 sharp then. Then Geraldine, engulfed within her ominous cloud, rumbles back through the office and is gone. The light resumes its place on Herb's desk, and his pupils contract for a moment. As he refocuses, he watches the butterfly as it continues to dance outside the window, coaxing and tantalizing, almost coquettishly, if a butterfly could assume such a demeanor. "Hey, Herb, look at me." Herb runs his hand over his chin, catching the patch of stubble that he's missed during this morning's shave. The empty yellow cells blink at him. Herb is no fool, of course. He is something of a spreadsheet genius, and all the projections, graphs, and charts will update automatically as soon as he inputs the missing figures. He turns his attention away from the butterfly for a moment and flicks to his emails. Nothing. 5 department heads have still not submitted their figures. Herb detests having to chase them. They make him feel insignificant, as though they have more important things to think about than a few numbers. Numbers that you should bloody well know if you had any clue what you were doing, thinks Herb. The tapping at the window draws his attention away from the screen. The butterfly is still there, and in the distance, pink and blue, marshmallow, cats and doigts with mustaches and jaunty hats are bounding along the treetops. The butterfly poses enigmatically on a small branch that grows out of the old brickwork, stretching and twitching its outstretched wings. Herb is so overwhelmingly compelled by the creature that he moves cautiously round to the other side of the desk and crouches down, the thinning fabric of his trousers straining at the knees as he does so. The glass separates his nose from the butterfly by less than an inch. Over the hills and the meadows, golden yellow with rapeseed and sunflowers, far too early for the time of year, but glorious all the same. The countryside is ablaze with color as Herb and the butterfly soar, dipping and flying over the landscape below, hanging on tightly to its wings, delighting in every swirl and swoop. Herb is surprised to see strange markings on the insect, not usual for this type. In between the clouds, the cats and dogs nod and doff their hats as he passes, and Herb strains his eyes against the wind, fascinated by the butterfly, curious to examine more closely its squiggles and shapes. Back at his desk, Herb recalls the markings, which were in fact numbers. 5 of them etched in fine, flowing lines across the butterfly's wings. He opens the spreadsheet and, compelled by something he knows not, he enters the numbers into the bright yellow cells, which immediately reformat to corporate gray. The bottom line updates, the graphs and charts complete. All is done. But the cell containing the overall projection for the next quarter is now red. This doesn't surprise Herb. The second quarter is always like that. So he prints off copies for the board meeting, slides them onto Geraldine's desk whilst she's in the washroom, and disappears for an early lunch. Outside, the sun has burned away the hazy cloud of earlier, and the day promises to be a little warmer than of late. Herb buys a takeaway sandwich and coffee. Then, in the small memorial garden down the road from the office, he finds an empty bench facing the sun. He sips the coffee, letting the warm, milky substance trickle down his throat and warm his insides, the caffeine tingling through his veins. Herb closes his eyes. Blotches of red, orange, and green fill his vision as the light from the sun leaves its mark. The green shapes begin to move in slow, swirling motions, bumping off the red and orange like a crooked kaleidoscope. Herb recalls holding his eye to the brightly decorated tube, turning the colored beads, reflecting in the mirrors. In the distance, his mother is calling him in from the living room to go through to the kitchen for his dinner. The kaleidoscope falls to the floor, and the green swirls fill his vision as a formation of leaves and petals spin clockwise and then anti-clockwise, alternating, until a purple snake pokes its head through the center of the arrangement. It smiles. It's a pleasant enough smile, though perhaps verging on the sinister, and the corners of Herb's mouth twitch slightly. People passing through the memorial garden give him a wide berth. Herb sips the last of his tepid coffee, eats the ham sandwich, which is now lukewarm, and stretches his legs before heading back inside. As he passes the office window, he checks his reflection. Reasonable enough, if a little worn around the edges, but he notices that his shirt looks an odd color. Herb shakes his head. Just the light, and heads back into the office. Herb's stomach sinks as, returning to his desk, he sees the familiar outline of Geraldine against the window. But as he gets closer, he notices an expression on her face that he's never seen before. Not the usual storm cloud, more like a break in the weather, a lightening of the day. There's a faint flush of color to her cheeks, a softening of her usually harsh and critical eyes. Her blouse, usually a nondescript department store shade of grayish beige, now seems to emit a slight hint of pink, not bright enough to be obvious, but just enough to make Herb look twice. The board meeting went well, she says. The projections were in line with expectations. Good work, true love. Herb nods, not sure how to respond. She has never called his work good before. Ever. I need you to run some modeling, she continues. Future projections based on recent trends. A few different scenarios. I want to see what we're looking at for the next couple of years. She turns to leave, then pauses. By the way, she adds, looking Herb up and down in a way that makes him feel like he's transparent. I like that shirt on you. You had a dark blue one on before, didn't you? Herb looks down. His shirt seems pale and washed out, and he's not entirely sure what color it had been earlier, his morning routine being somewhat chaotic. The first shirt out of the wardrobe usually suffices. Herb sits at his desk. For a moment, he glances towards the window as temptation draws him to contemplate for just a little while. But Geraldine's demeanor has startled him, setting him off balance. For the first time since starting with the firm, he feels compelled to produce what she wants as accurately and as promptly as he can. Herb exhales slowly and turns to the spreadsheet. Numbers and formulas are a place of comfort and security for him, and he begins to plan out the equations and tables of data that he needs. Everything is mapping into the right place. No errors flash, but his mind is slowly drifting. The warmth of the sun still lingers on his face. The coffee tingles in his bloodstream, and Herb's fingers hover over the keys. The marshmallow cats and dogs have returned, their sugary bodies bound across a soft, undulating pastel landscape, their hats perched askew at gravity-defying angles. Herb watches the beautiful hues of the world around them, gentle like childhood dreams. He smiles as they swirl and leap, admiring their peculiar hats and mustaches. Then there's a flicker, and something deeper in his mind stirs. Herb snaps back to the screen. The formatting is wrong. Purple cells, they hadn't been there before. He hadn't formatted them that way. Herb was sure of that. The empty spaces within them pulse ever so slightly, and Herb's stomach tightens as he recalls the numbers on the golden-tipped butterfly. The snake was purple. He tries to remember the patterns. Had there been numbers? Herb leans back in his chair and closes his eyes, trying to recall, attempting to re-summon the lunchtime dream. The marshmallow creatures appear again, bounding across rolling, gentle pistachio fields, warm, comforting, inviting. But that's not what he needs right now. The snake had been different. It had coiled through a spiral of violet and deep shades of green, its smile knowing, its movements slow and deliberate. Herb pushes deeper into the memory, searching for it, feeling the gentle marshmallow dreams resisting, as if trying to keep him away. Then he finds it. The kaleidoscope returns. Your dinner's ready, Herbert. But the snake slithers from the swirling pattern of leaves, its scales shimmering in purple hues. And there they are, the numbers, etched in golden ink along its back, shifting and twisting as the creature moves. Herb returns to his desk with a jolt. His fingers move quickly, before his waking mind erases what he's just seen. And with shaking hands, he enters the snake's numbers into the spreadsheet. The model updates. The figures align. Herb's heart thumps in his chest. The purple cells have turned gray, but he doesn't know what the new snake-derived data means. But when he prints the pages and places them on Geraldine's desk, she looks at him with something close to admiration. "Interesting," she murmurs. Geraldine chews her freshly painted lips as her eyes move across the sheets. "This changes things. Leave this with me, true love." Then a pause as she adjusts the chain of magenta beads that seem to have appeared around her neck. "Thank you." Later in the week, we find Herb reflecting on the events of the last couple of days. He's continually surprised and a little bewildered at the changes he sees in Geraldine's persona, gaining subtle hints of color in both her wardrobe and her demeanor. With every financial forecast or model that she requests, amidst wild daytime dreams and flickering spreadsheets, Herb delivers the goods. He knows he's making a good impression, but his daytime reveries are changing, showing him things he's never seen before, and he isn't sure how he feels about that. The faded and worn knees of his trousers have thinned further, now nearly transparent. And when he catches his reflection in the washroom mirror, the patchy stubble on his chin seems to be developing a rather gray tinge. Herb's comforting daydreams, full of soft and gentle color, seem to come less readily, and the pink and blue creatures keep on vanishing over the darkened horizon. The spring that threatened to flourish just days earlier has retreated back into winter, and a bitter easterly wind whips around every building and street corner. Today, it is Friday, and Geraldine wants the latest figures to review over the weekend. As ever, Herb is on point to deliver. It seems to him that the department heads have faded into obscurity. They approve the files that Herb emails to them without a second glance, and Geraldine continues to be enthralled, enchanted almost, by the tables and charts that Herb sets on her desk at every demand. This morning, Geraldine's blouse is a vibrant cornflower blue, her smile brighter, her voice lighter. She calls Herb into her office. "Herb?" she smiles. "Did she just call me Herb?" "The board members have noticed your work. They want you to take on some more experimental forecasting." Herb's eyes drift past Geraldine's shoulder. Through the window, he sees a slender man in a tight red suit balancing on the edge of the window ledge. He's grinning at Herb, opening and closing his suit jacket, revealing something, a code perhaps, and then quickly concealing it, smirking as he does so. Behind, in the distance, the soothing colors of pastel fields flicker as marshmallow cats and dogs try to draw Herb's attention. The scarlet character outside the window watches, waiting. Herb! Geraldine's voice punctures Herb's distraction. This could mean a promotion, more pay, more prestige. Think about it over the weekend. Herb rattles his head, bringing himself back into the moment. I'm sorry, Geraldine. It's been quite a week. He looks down at his hand. It looks paler than before, almost translucent under the harsh office lights. He swallows, his throat dry. I'll get those figures to you this morning, ready for the weekend. The spreadsheet gapes at Herb. It flickers. Cells that were accurate earlier are now showing HRF and other disturbing error codes that Herb has never seen before. Other cells are suddenly formatted in red, their borders animated, serpents slithering around each red cell. Herb looks out of the window across the gray sky, where trees bend and sway in the wind, and litter from the street blows up in gusts. The red-suited man peeps impishly around the corner of the window, just enough that Herb sees his menacing grin. Then he steps fully into view. Herb notices the purple snake wrapped around the man's left leg, and on his right shoulder sits a butterfly with golden-tipped wings. Somewhere in the distance, in what feels like another world, a dream within a dream, the blue and pink marshmallow creatures are trying to reach him, their little hats bobbing as they bounce over clouds. But the scarlet presence is looming closer, toying with the buttons on his red jacket. Open or closed, it mouths through the glass. The butterfly flaps and the snake slithers, its purple scales gleaming, waiting for Herb to notice the fresh set of numbers along its back. As Herb closes his eyes, he finds himself at an unfamiliar crossroads. One path stretches away in soft, gentle hues. It feels familiar and safe. He can see the marshmallow creatures playing in the distance, their hats bobbing as they bound through a pastel-tinted world of sunlit clouds. They wag their tails, tweak their mustaches, urging him to join them. But they are fading, their edges blurring. In the opposite direction, shadows twist into deeper, richer colors: purple, red, gold. The air sparks with energy that Herb can't see, and the red-suited man stands, waiting, his smirk widening as he temptingly holds his jacket open, revealing an array of numbers and equations. Herb rubs his eyes, looks again in each direction. Herb is compelled by something unfathomable, but he thinks he understands. At his desk, Herb works feverishly, head down. He is focused on completing the spreadsheet for Geraldine. By lunchtime, he has succeeded in his task. Geraldine is happy. She pats the papers on her desk fondly, like a favorite pet. She'll look at them over the weekend, she tells Herb. She trusts him to have done a good job. We rejoin Herbert Truelove the following morning. It is Saturday. His tousled head emerges from beneath the bedclothes, and he greets the weekend with a yawn, blinking at the light creeping between the gap in his thin bedroom curtains. He has slept well, remarkably well, in fact. It has been the best night's sleep Herb has had in a very long time. Storm of duality. Not again. Not so soon. Margaret's whisper carried over the silence of the house. With a fierce grip, she bit her remaining fingernail, tearing a piece off and causing the skin to bleed. Margaret stood at the window as the sky brooded, thick with the weight of an impending storm. Dark clouds churned in slow agony, twisting and folding over themselves as if writhing in torment. This storm, she knew, would continue for days. Long, agonizing days. A sharp gust of wind rattled the glass, and she flinched. The leaves outside skittered like restless spirits, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The first patter of rain kissed the roof, soft, almost deceivingly gentle. She, however, saw through the deception. Soon, the downpour would come, the sky would open, and the world would drown in its sorrow. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. It was happening again. The slow, creeping descent. The shift within herself that she feared most. Margaret felt strangely linked to the storm. A tether that bound her to its fury, its anguish. As the clouds thickened and the thunder rumbled low in the distance, something inside her twisted. The familiar chasm in her mind yawned open, and she felt herself slipping into it. Her childhood marked her first awareness of this connection. A violent thunderstorm had raged outside, and she had found herself gripped with a restless, frantic energy. It was as though the storm had crawled inside her and filled her veins with its electric charge. Her mother had found her hours later, curled in a corner, whispering to herself. "It's not me," she had murmured over and over. "It's not me." Adulthood brought no change to that feeling. The storm, the darkness, the shifting inside her. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's how it felt. Two selves coexisting in fragile balance until the storm tipped the scale. A peal of thunder cracked across the sky, and she clenched her hands into fists. The rain was coming harder now, sheets of it hammering against the house with merciless force. The wind howled, shaking the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. As she moved from the window, the walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows distorting her sense of reality. She reached for the kettle with unsteady hands, trying to focus on something tangible, something real. But her fingers fumbled, and the kettle clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. Margaret gawped, stumbling back and slamming into the counter. The impact sent a jolt through her body, but it was nothing compared to the dread twisting inside her. The storm's grip extended beyond the world outside. It clawed at her very mind, unraveling her sanity, thread by thread. She could feel herself fracturing, her thoughts splintering under the immense pressure, as if something dark and insidious lurked just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. The whispering started then, not from outside, not from the wind, but from within her own head. Just surrender. It will be easier. She squeezed her eyes shut, rocking her head. No, why fight it? You know this is who you are. She pressed her hands to her temples. Her breathing was increasing, like the thunder and lightning. Her ears were buzzing, overpowering the storm itself. Margaret sensed her body was detaching from itself, like her reality was crumbling to the floor. It was the storm inside her, the darkness waiting to consume her. Another crack of thunder split the sky, and a bolt of lightning illuminated the house in a stark, white flash. Margaret reconnected with her body again and felt the surge through her veins, like she poked a fork in a light socket. She glimpsed at herself in the kettle's reflection. Her dilated eyes, the size of marbles, and her pale, almost unrecognizable face stared back at her. Then she realized the storm had taken her. She staggered backward, her hands clutching at the edge of the counter. She needed to hold on, to ground herself. She didn't want to become that person. Darkness prompted unthinkable actions. It whispered to her, feeding her fears, twisting her thoughts until right and wrong blurred together. It promised relief, power, an escape from the suffocating weight of reality. But she knew the cost. She had seen it before, felt it claw at her mind, urging her to surrender. Her fingers gripped the counter tighter, nails biting into the surface. She had to resist. She fought despite the overwhelming urge to give up. Letting go felt incredibly tempting. To release pent-up emotion, to embody the storm's will. She could feel the power coiling in her chest, raw and untamed. Another roar of thunder, another crash of rain. The wind shrieked, rattling the windows as she thought they might shatter. Margaret let out a strangled sob. Please, stop. But storms don't listen. Their anger is unrestrained, and they destroy. Tears burned fiery trails down her cheeks. She staggered forward, pressing her forehead to the cool glass of the window. The rain distorted the world outside, turning everything into an indistinct blur. Just like her mind, she had to hold on. She had to be strong and fight. With a trembling breath, she forced herself to move, to step away from the window. She grabbed the kettle from the floor and set it back on the stove. The the simple motion anchoring her. She filled it with water, her fingers still shaking, but moving with purpose. The dizziness was overpowering her, while vibrations pulsate at her temples, and brief electrical shakes interrupted her thought process. She would endure the storm, both outside and within. But what awaited on the other side? Would she emerge unscathed? Or would the tempest leave its mark, reshaping her in ways she could never undo? Having put the kettle back on the counter, Margaret closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She made her way to the special place, the soundproof area, with images of forests, waterfalls, and seascape. She made sure it was stocked with water, nuts, and protein bars. This served as her refuge, untouched by inner or outer turmoil. Here, seemingly serene, she escaped chaos. Briefly rediscovering herself, Margaret cast a final glance at the furious storm, its howls clawing at the windows like a desperate specter. As she forced the door shut, the latch clicked into place, a thin barrier between her and the chaos beyond. Yet, just before the silence settled, the storm's final utterance slithered through the cracks, a venomous whisper threading into her mind. "You can never escape me. I'll always be with you." A tremor ran down her spine, but she clenched her fists, grounding herself. The storm could rage, it could scream, but she refused to let it claim her. Not tonight, and for tonight, that was enough. The black of 3 a.m. My favorite time of the day is 3 a.m. Why, you might ask? Well, the answer is quite simple, but the answer is quite complicated. You'll understand in time. All we have is time, especially at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is for the people, a heaven and a hell that works hand in hand. Most are sleeping by 3 a.m., the normal practice. That's not the true 3 a.m., though, not in the slightest. 3 a.m. is uneasy breathing as you wake from a nightmare, alert and ready for danger, before you realize it cannot cross the plains into reality. It existed, but the silence that 3 a.m. offers you reminds you it is no longer real. It was real, but it's gone. Maybe it'll be back, but not now. Not at 3 a.m. However, for some, it's far too real, far too close, and it's right there. 3 a.m. is there to support them, though, the black filled with cloud from the moon. It makes the lights we use seem so bright, makes every step seem too loud. Yet, it is perfect. 3 a.m. is technology-lit rooms. It's for the gamer who has yet to quit their endeavors, with softly pressed keys and hushed voices. It's for those who the 3 a.m. favors, letting the time wash by as they hope for sleep, reprieve, something. It rarely comes. They hate the 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is for bright white lights of shops that seem amiss in the black of night. The people inside always vary, but not all of them want to be there. Not all of them like that side of 3 a.m. It's filled with soft chatter, or more often, no chatter. A silence that booms, that ticks on by. The people all have reasons for being there. Some can't sleep as a duty to their family, to travel within the black of night, to lessen their family's load. Some can't sleep because of what sleeping means for them, the horror it brings along again and again. Then there are those that brave the 3 a.m. for something go insignificant as money. The cashier who experiences the full blunt of how slow 3 a.m. can be. The man with a gun, he's the most desperate, but he knows how bad the 3 a.m. can get. The officers, tired, exhausted, but they have a job to do. 3 a.m. is terrifying. It's black, black, black. It's lonely. It's scary. There are things that happen at 3 a.m. in back alleys and bar bathrooms. 3 a.m. teaches you just how horrible the world is, how unmerciful it is. I think 3 a.m. depends on the people. It's made for the people. 3 a.m. is the time where no one judges, where people can be their truest selves, for best or for worse. 3 a.m. is like the sky, the night sky. It's black, black, black. That is it. It's darkness and darkness, and it swallows up everything. 3 a.m. is like the sky, bright and full of stars, all so far away. The sky is darkness, 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 but it allows us to see, to truly see what surrounds us. It shows us the stars from so far away, burning and burning away, until you realize that we can only see what the stars once were, a bright light before it burns out. 3 a.m. is for loss, for quiet sobs and silent wailing. It's for time to stop, to let reality hit you head on. 3 a.m. is for selfish, hateful crying over losses you never used to think you had to prepare for. 3 a.m. is for pain, for bubbly and outgoing people to let their feelings take control, to lose the mask they present the world. It's a time for red to meet bathroom tiles. It's a time for young people to fly. It's time for pain. 3 a.m. is pain, and it doesn't know anything else. 3 a.m. is for love, for heart-to-heart chats on top of bridges, or whispered phone calls under blankets. 3 a.m. is for wrapping wounds you shouldn't have made, but knowing they will worry your friend, so hiding them is a priority. 3 a.m. is for promises. A text that says you'll love them forever. A voice message saying it's not their fault, never their fault. Sometimes it's promising them unconditional love, and sometimes it's promising them more time. 3 a.m. is mysterious like that, despite its flaws. I love 3 a.m. I recognize it for what it is. It's a time to rest, to scream, to cry, to mourn. But it's also a time to talk, to connect, to know you aren't alone. 3 a.m. is peaceful. 3 a.m. is awful. It gives, but then it takes. 3 a.m. is where I met you for the first time. On the very bridge I wouldn't leave, I met you. We spoke of 3 a.m. together under the moonlight. We spoke of 3 p.m. as well. 3 p.m. caused your 3 a.m. After all, 3 p.m. was something that took a long time to come for you. But once it was there, you would savor it, even if only for a moment. You spent your days wishing for 3 p.m. Because if 3 a.m. was for life to pass, 3 p.m. was for school to pass. Then you spoke of such unfairnesses that were never righted once 3 p.m. came for you. The aftermath of 3 p.m. We both knew that 3 a.m. was your only reprieve of the day. And yet you decided that 3 a.m. was worth dealing with what surrounded 3 p.m. It wasn't my first 3 a.m., but it was yours. So we talked and talked and talked. I managed to stop your plans. Each night you came, and each night I stopped you. Each night I could stop you. Your 3 p.m. never got any better. I knew that. I knew that. I knew that. Your 3 a.m.s got so regular. We got so regular. Then we got better. Or did we? Was I just imagining that? I saw you smile more. Soft and so vulnerable. You gave me your soul, whispered every secret. And yet, you were my sister, my little baby sister. Not by blood, not by name, but by 3 a.m. whispers. You were blood in ways that mattered. Shared blood-splattering pavements and matching bruises from after our 3 p.m. You were my 3 a.m. You made my 3 p.m. bearable, and I returned the favor as much as I could. Little sister, you were so little. We were far too young. I broke our promise. First, it was selfish, foolish, and absolutely monstrous of me. You weren't there. You didn't need our 3 a.m. I slipped. I'm sorry. So sorry. I knew there would be consequences. When you came to our spot on the abandoned bridge, the next 3 a.m., oh, I tried to hug you, tight as you wailed, pulling you into a cold embrace. It was no use, though, no matter how tight I held you, no matter how much I loved you. I failed you, my dear little sister. You were the only person to find my body, and I, yours. Repercussion. I remember the car crash that took my grandmother's life, like it was yesterday. And when I say I remember, I mean vividly, because I was in the passenger seat. We hit an oncoming vehicle, trying to overtake on a blind bend. My grandmother seemed to register the car and sighed at the inevitable. Everything happened in slow motion. The sound of metal crushing, air whooshing past where it shouldn't. The man who was trying to overtake hit the driver's side of my car and ended up hitting a tree and burning to death after impact. It felt like we were spinning for ages. I had looked over at my grandmother, hunched over, a look of pure terror mirroring my own. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was told the woman in the third car avoided the crash completely and pulled up onto the grassy bank on the other side of the road from where the car was burning to call the police. My mother was a wreck for weeks after, ranting at me from the minute I opened my eyes in the hospital bed. How could you let her drive, Anne? It was your car, your responsibility. The doctor, with his blue scrubs and shaved head, said it was a miracle. I only had a fractured wrist and concussion, considering my grandmother had split her head open, lost her arm with the car door, and had a heart attack as she bled out. I knew my mother's rage was mostly because I was unconscious for the last few moments of her mother's life, where she died alone and in pain. My father tried to reassure me that it wasn't my fault, but I knew it was. I knew she would still be here if I had driven. The morning of the crash, she had walked the mile or so. It was from her house to ours, hoping we could go shopping together, as she did almost every Saturday since I got my license. Because I idolized her, when she asked to drive us, I would always let her, every time. I wasn't allowed to visit her, lying in rest in the chapel. It will upset the aunts and uncles too much, was the excuse my mother used. She was the heart and soul of the family, you understand. But I didn't. She was my grandmother. She was part of me too. They should have let me say goodbye. A week after the funeral, the dreams started. She always turned up at the front door, asking if I wanted to go shopping with her, much like she did the morning of the crash. Those first few weeks, I always woke up not long after I saw her standing there, the terror jolting me out of the dream. I rarely dreamt before the crash. Sleep then had been beautiful blackness. I prayed for a dreamless sleep to return, growing weary of the overactive repetition of my sleeping mind. As time went on and winter came around, the dreams uncontrollably got longer. I would agree to drive her, and as I walked out the front door in my dream, she would start having a heart attack, falling to the ground in a pile of blood that rose from the grassy lawn. When I told my father about this, fearful of letting my mother know, he put it down to the medication I was on. He took me back to the doctors, who prescribed me something else to try. The dreams didn't stop, but they didn't get worse either. I tried to return to normal, going to volleyball practice and on date nights with my boyfriend, Phil. It worked for a little while, nearly 2 months after the crash. I opened my curtains one morning and looked down at the lawn, as I had done every morning of my life, to see someone standing at the end of the drive, about 100 yards away. I didn't pay much attention to them the first day, or second. On the third day, the person moved a bit closer to the house, as if demanding to be seen. My grandmother looked up at me with a blank expression. I shut the curtains, trying to ignore the apparition. I was convinced death was coming to get me, so I stopped sleeping, afraid I wouldn't wake up. The lack of sleep meant grandmother was around more, stalking me from a closer proximity, standing behind me in the mirror as I washed my face in the morning, sitting in the back of the car when my mother took me to school, walking past me in the hallways at school. I was grateful she remained silent, and her right arm was still intact. She had given me a cross for my 10th birthday, and I dug it out of my closet and started wearing it constantly, hoping it would ward off her spirit, or at least trick my brain into warding her off. But the cross did nothing. I Googled ways to relax. It told me to take a bath and eat healthier food. I was barely eating, so I took a bath. Everything was okay, until the bath water turned bright red, like fresh blood. And I passed out from a mixture of fear and lack of food. My mother found me hours later, prune-like and shivering in the water. "Can't you see it?" I said through chattering teeth. She looked over my body as if checking for injury. "See what? What did you do?" I spoke slowly, my voice raspy. "The bath is filled with blood." My mother flinched, as though I had slapped her, then pulled the plug out and let the bath drain. Then she wrapped me in 3 towels and bundled me downstairs to sit in front of the fire, where I watched my grandmother's face dance behind the flames. One Saturday, at the height of my newfound insanity, as Phil was cooking us dinner in his family home, he called me by her name, Hazel. I got a head rush from the shock, and I closed my eyes for a few seconds while I waited for it to pass. When I opened my eyes again, my grandmother appeared in front of me, where I stood by the stove, smiling at me for the first time since she had appeared posthumously. I started screaming. Weeks of no sleep, being haunted by your dead grandmother, will eventually make you lose your mind. Phil couldn't calm me down, and ended up calling my parents to come and get me. No one else could see her standing there smiling, her mouth twisted more to the right than I remembered. Her eyes followed me wherever I went in the room, but she remained in place. "Maybe we need to take her to see a specialist," I heard my mother say to my father as I sobbed in the back seat of the car. She already has a doctor. There's something not right about her. Not anymore. She needs to see a psychiatrist or something. But the specialist, who prescribed me even more pills, told me repeatedly that at 17, I wasn't seeing my dead grandmother. You just have clinical exhaustion. You'll be fine. That night, I took the new pills I had been given to put me to sleep, only to be woken up by the feeling of hands around my neck, crushing my windpipe. I opened my eyes to see my grandmother standing over me as I lay in bed, unable to move. What a shame, my grandmother hissed, her voice deep and not at all the sweet, sing-song voice she had in life. I needed her to stop haunting me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I fought to get the words out. I would do anything to trade places with you. Anything. Her mouth pulled up slowly on the right side. Anything. I was gasping in the dark. No, not gasping. Choking. Choking on something in my throat. A snake crawled into my mouth and was snaking its way to my stomach. I could feel my lips around its slimy body. She's awake, I heard my mother say. Couldn't she see I was being suffocated? I peeled back my dry eyelids as the snake started to move, feeling a lot like this was the end. Especially when I was met with blinding light, blinking until the room came into focus. To first see the doctor with his shaved head, who was pulling a tube out of my mouth. Then I noticed my mother to the right of me, standing up next to the bed. Father sat beside her. Furthest away from me was my grandmother, standing in the doorway, her lips taut in a wry smile. I was going to be sick. It's okay, Anne. It's okay. My mother began, stroking my hair as soon as the doctor was finished. You were in an accident, but you're okay. This wasn't happening. Or rather, this had already happened, hadn't it? I went to wipe my tears away with my right hand, but for some reason, I couldn't move it. Grandmother still stood in the doorway, now expressionless. I tried to see what was trapping my right arm, but I couldn't see anything for the sheet covering me. You were in a car crash, darling. But my mother couldn't continue, breaking into sobs. I tried to say, "What?" But it came out all muffled and wrong. My tongue, somehow, too big for my mouth. My father was shaking his head. You were in a car crash, Anne, grandmother said. Her voice that had evaded me for weeks was frail and dry. The impact tore your right arm off. No, this wasn't happening. I was shaking my head frantically. The doctor was concerned with my heart rate and hyperventilation, injecting me with something that made the world go fuzzy. Grandmother moved closer to me in my haze, still not smiling. She seemed to be talking to my parents about something, but I couldn't hear them. The drugs were too powerful. Reality eventually slipped away, and I fell into a dreamless sleep for once. When I woke up, I opened my eyes to my dimly lit bedroom at home, looking exactly as it had on the morning of the crash. My heart was pounding in my chest. I kept telling myself it was a dream. It was all just a dream. The crash, the hospital, everything. But I was too scared to move, for fear I discovered my right arm was missing. The temporal drift. I could still feel the biting pressure of the zip ties on my wrists, the echoes of my parents' screams ringing in my ears. Time travel was my lock and key, a temporary solace from the agony of my past. But now, it felt like something more, a last-ditch effort to preserve my soul, to outrun the ghosts of my mistakes. I had never imagined that a time travel discovery, once a triumph, would come to haunt me. But there it was. George Walsh had entered my life under the guise of advancing my discovery, only to destroy the very essence of my work. Our captors, a part of international security for global government, wanted nothing more than to exploit my discovery for their own gain. Revenge was the one thing I craved, the one thing that consumed me completely. It was an equation, a system of cause and effect I could almost predict. George Walsh had taken everything from me. My parents, murdered my work, destroyed my life in fragments of emotional turmoil. He deserved to vanish from existence. And in the stillness of my heart, I felt more certain that I could make that happen and get away with it. But I was no longer the same person I had been months ago. I was someone different, someone capable of far darker things than I had ever realized. And that terrified me. I felt weight of the pocket watch in my hand, like a leaden anchor, pulling me deeper into the darkness. Memories of my parents' screams echoed faintly in my mind, but I knew that if I let them take control, they would destroy me. The time travel device had given me power, yes, but power was a dangerous thing. As a physicist, I understood the delicate balance of energy and entropy. I knew that any small disturbance could lead to catastrophic consequences. Reality itself bending and breaking in ways I could not control. Emotions were overpowering my logic. Revenge was tempting, seductive even. It was a persistent force, creeping into my thoughts, pulling me back into the past, into the moments of pain and loss. It was intoxicating. I could almost taste it, feel it running through my veins. If I allowed it to consume me, I'd be no better than the very people I sought to destroy. I was at war with myself, my mind telling me to focus, to fight the urge for violence, but my body trembling with the desire to strike. My nails dug into my palms, a small anchor in the raging storm. I tried to breathe, to focus, but the thoughts were relentless. The mathematics of it all did not add up. I was trapped in a paradox of my own making. Every thought I had led to another, a series of equations that felt impossible to solve. Revenge would change everything, but I could not afford to lose control. If I did, I would make an irreversible mistake. Again, that would be truly brilliant, wouldn't it? Sleep offered no comfort, but a pattern emerged in the dreams that plagued me. They were not mine, not entirely. They were vivid, pulling me into a past that was not my own, into a time of great resistance and rebellion. The golden age of piracy, a period of defiance against oppressive forces, where violence and betrayal were everyday occurrences. I grasped onto that dream like a lifeline. Perhaps revenge was not my only option. Perhaps I could rewrite my own fate without destroying everything. However, the dark urge refused be ignored. It whispered louder with every passing hour, its voice growing insistent and demanding. Revenge was cunning. It seeped into my bones, making it increasingly more difficult to think straight. It clawed at me, its claws like the jagged edges of a broken mirror. My hands convulsed. My heart raced. Every inch of me screamed for action. But I knew better. I was a scientist, after all. I understood systems, the way one small change could ripple outward and cause unintended consequences. Revenge was an unstable reaction. It would explode, and I would lose myself in the process. But I could not stop the storm inside of me. Time travel had never been attempted before. No one had ever successfully crossed the threshold between ages, and yet here I was, stuck in limbo, in a place where the boundaries of time blurred and twisted. I should have been focused, should have been calculating every detail of my destination, but instead, my mind was adrift. It was as if the chaos inside me had spilled into the very fabric of time itself, distorting my path. And then, just as the chaos threatened to take over, I felt it. A cold, icy hand of dissonance. It was me, or at least a version of me that I no longer recognized. This version of me was lost in the darkness, a person forged by pain and revenge, someone I was terrified of becoming. It was as if my own fear gripped my heart, pulling me away from the edge of destruction. I closed my eyes, fighting for control. I couldn't think clearly. The rage was suffocating, like a fear that threatened to consume me whole. I tried to remember what I knew about systems. Could I control the chaos? I thought of thermodynamics, of entropy, and the second law, that everything tended toward disorder. Was this my own collapse? Was I simply a part of a greater, inevitable breakdown? I clutched the pocket watch, the mechanism cold against my skin. The ticking, once a comforting sound, now felt like the ticking of a bomb. Time was slipping away, but I had to make my choice. The past was a tangled mess, and if I tried to correct it, if I tried to rewrite it, I might undo everything I had worked for. But revenge was too tempting. It pressed against me, a living, breathing thing. I could not escape it. It was inside me. And yet, there was something else. Hope. Hope had always been so distant, something I hadn't allowed myself to believe in for so long. But in that moment, in that fractured, chaotic space, I grasped it with my fingertips. It was a lifeline, pulling me away from the precipice of vengeance. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to hold on to that warmth, a flicker of it, faint but undeniable. Could it really be there, in the darkest recesses of my mind? I closed my eyes, listening to my breath, steadying myself. The time travel device was my escape, but it could also serve to be my salvation. I didn't have to destroy everything to fix my mistakes. I could choose a different path, one that didn't lead to annihilation. The warm glow of hope began to spread from my fingertips, a tiny spark that grew with each breath I took. The darkness that had been clawing at me started to retreat, fading like a bad dream. The rage that had been consuming me felt distant now, as if it no longer had a hold on me. I focused on the past, on the golden age of piracy, a time where resistance thrived, not for vengeance, but for something greater, freedom. A different kind of rebellion. I felt the now familiar pull of time travel as the world around me warped. My body shuddered, the vertigo setting in, but I held on to the flicker of hope. I could escape the grip of revenge. I could escape my fate and choose something else. The darkness around me deepened, but this time I was not afraid. The weight of my decision was immense, but the warmth of hope anchored me. The past was waiting, but this time I was not running toward destruction. I was running toward a new future.